I moved in thinking it would be a fresh start, privacy, peace. But from the very first night, I realized I wasn't alone, and the apartment, it remembered, and it erased. I had just moved into my first solo apartment. After years of living with roommates, I craved privacy, and this small one-bedroom unit on the second floor of a mid-sized complex in Columbus, Ohio, seemed perfect. It faced the back lot, overlooked some trees, and gave me a quiet I had never experienced in college. At first, everything felt safe, familiar, predictable. I liked it. Life was ordinary, almost peaceful, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to relax. The first couple of weeks passed without incident. I barely noticed the neighbors, aside from the occasional nod to residents walking by or the muffled arguing of the couple across the hall. But then, small things began happening that I couldn't explain. A book I left on the counter would be back on the shelf the next morning. A coffee mug I left on the table would vanish, replaced by an empty plate. I brushed it off, blaming tiredness or distraction from settling into a new routine. Yet, as the nights went on, the occurrences became impossible to ignore. I kept meticulous habits, locking doors, closing windows, turning off lights, and yet, each morning, the apartment seemed to reset itself. Everything was exactly as it had been when I first moved in. Even the personal touches I added vanished, as though the apartment itself were erasing my presence. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Perhaps I had a lapse in memory. But the pattern became undeniable. The apartment ignored me completely, yet it affected my life in ways I could not control. One night, I left my lamp on before bed. When I woke up, it was off. A small plant I had carefully placed on the windowsill had returned to its original spot. My heart began to pound. I checked every door and window, locked. No sign of intrusion. I started recording everything: videos, photographs, timestamps. I needed evidence, a rational explanation. But no matter what I documented, by morning, the proof had vanished. Notes I left for myself disappeared. Journals I had tried to use were gone. Even my phone, left charging on the nightstand, sometimes had its brightness dimmed as if someone had adjusted it while I slept. I was alone, and yet I felt constantly watched. On the seventh night, I awoke to a faint glow in my room. My eyes, adjusting to the darkness, caught movement near a corner I had never paid attention to before. My heart thundered in my chest. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. There it was, a door, one I had never noticed. It creaked open slowly. Fear and curiosity wrestled inside me, but I stepped forward. The room beyond looked like my bedroom, but older, decayed, and thick with dust. Cobwebs clung to the corners. On a small table lay a diary, open as though it were waiting for me. The pages were filled with handwriting I didn't recognize, chronicling a previous tenant who had vanished mysteriously. My stomach dropped as I read the final line. "The apartment resets tonight. It will erase me. It will erase everything. Don't stay." I stumbled backward, fumbling in terror. When I looked again, the door and diary had vanished. The apartment was normal, pristine, untouched, as if nothing had happened. I could hardly comprehend what I had seen. This wasn't a haunting. It was something alive, something that remembered and erased. Sleep became restless after that night. Every creak, every shadow felt like an intruder. Even mundane routines, making coffee, checking the mailbox, adjusting the thermostat, felt observed. I tried documenting the resets meticulously. Photographs, videos, timestamps. Nothing remained in the morning. My recordings revealed nothing unusual except a faint shimmer. Like the air itself was alive, breathing. Paranoia grew. I avoided going out at night. Friends stopped visiting because I couldn't explain the events without sounding insane. I slept with the lights on, but the resets continued. Nothing I did could prevent them. The apartment existed outside the rules of reality, and I was powerless. Determined to face it, I set cameras and sensors throughout the apartment, monitoring every corner. That night, I lay in bed, resolved to observe without interfering. At exactly 3:33 a.m., a strange hum filled the room. The lights flickered violently. Shadows stretched and twisted across the walls. Objects lifted slightly, moved, and returned to their original positions. I was paralyzed, unable to look away as the apartment began its nightly ritual. The cameras recorded nothing but a faint distortion in the air, a ripple, a shimmer moving across the room. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, my breath caught in my throat. Every object, every small personal item obeyed a rule I could not understand. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. Morning came. The apartment was perfectly tidy, everything in its place. There was no trace of what had just occurred, except the fear that lingered in my chest. I packed my belongings immediately and left. I never returned. Even now, when I pass a quiet second-floor apartment with sunlight filtering through the blinds, I wonder, what is it doing? And who or what might it erase next?